Okay, so I want to talk about gender-based violence today as a very important modern discourse that sort of ties in with the Anglosphere, the human rights, United Nations, democracy, rule of law, all those wonderful things that we were taught to believe in. And I want to problematize the issue. Okay, so first of all, we see that the West has tied itself into knots here, first of all, with a definition of gender-based violence. Now, in the past, gender-based violence generally used to refer to violence perpetrated against women. That was sort of the general definition. Here we can see that gender-based violence and violence against women are two terms that are often used interchangeably, as most violence against women is inflicted by men for gender-based reasons, and gender-based violence affects women disproportionately. Okay, so then later on we see that the definition now has to be expanded because of LGBT plus. Okay, so here they say that gender-based violence refers to any type of harm that is perpetrated against a person or group of people because of their factual or perceived sex, gender, sexual orientation, and or gender identity. So what I want to problematize is why violence specifically perpetrated against women was isolated as a category of violence, when in fact, if we look at the context or the stats for violence, then the majority of violence is perpetrated against men. So male on male violence far outweighs violence against women. So why is there a specific need to categorize gender violence or violence against women as a separate category? First, that's the first point. And the reason is because it is tacitly acknowledged that women are weaker than men. And so why violence against women is more repugnant than violence against men is because it is the violence perpetrated against the weak from the strong. So the strong is perpetrating violence against the weak. So that is why it is more repugnant. But they can't come out and just say it like that, okay? Because this would go against their equality narrative, okay? That men and women are equal and the same. No, men are stronger in general than women, which is why gender-based violence is more repugnant than violence in general. And violence in general is carried out more frequently against men. Not only men on men, but women also perpetrate violence against men, often because they don't expect a retaliation. So the other reality is that most men do not aim to perpetrate violence against women. Okay? So if you go to any of the statistics on gender-based violence, the numbers they give there, it's usually not put into context. Okay? So if we go, for example, stats on gender-based violence, right? Gender-based violence, statistics, get the facts. You will see that it's usually not put into any sort of framework other than just listing the numbers, okay? So we don't understand what the numbers mean except that the numbers are very high. Okay? So let's see. Harmful. 1 in 3 worldwide will experience physical or sexual abuse in a lifetime. So the statistics on gender gender-based violence oblique, the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs estimates that 1 in 3 women, so a third of the women worldwide, will experience physical or sexual abuse in her lifetime. In 2020, the UN Office on Drugs and Crime found that, on average, a girl or woman is killed by someone in her own family every 11 minutes. Now, this is a bleak statistic, and it would be very, very good for this not to be the case. I'm not arguing against the idea that women should be especially protected. That's not what I'm arguing against. I'm saying that it is not often put into perspective of violence in general. Okay, so remember the stat here, it is 1 in 3 women worldwide. Okay, so now we have violence, let's see if we can find it, against men. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so yeah, they're going to give us a statistic according to the World Health Organization. Intimate partner violence is among the major risks. Okay, I don't actually see good numbers here or presented in a good way. Domestic violence, not domestic violence, just violence in general, okay? Here we go, and this is the point, here we go. So, although this is Wikipedia and people say it's not a good source, but when the source is cited outside of Wikipedia, then you can rely on it, right? So here we have, studies of social attitudes show violence is perceived as more or less serious depending on the gender of victim and perpetrator. People are less likely to report a man hitting another man to the police than a man hitting a woman. Why? Because it is outrageous for a man to hit a woman. Again, a stronger hitting a weaker person. That is why it is considered outrageous. Okay? A study in 2023 found that people, especially women, are less likely to accept violence against women than violence against men. So violence against men is particularly accepted. It's acceptable. Okay? And obviously more men die through violence than women. Of course, men go to war, okay? But besides men going to war in the street, on the street level in life, even when people want to perpetrate some sort of violent crime, they usually do it against other men. So war obviously is a big issue, right? Conscription, forced conscription. Okay, women are not forcibly conscripted into the army, but men are. Okay, so and then most men form the majority of the police force, and most men form the majority of criminals also, gangsters, etc. Okay, so violent criminals are also mostly men. So you can see here there is a tendency towards violence in human beings in general. And so this brings me to the broader issue, which is violence in general is a human trait. Okay, we are violent. There's aspects to human nature that is violent, and children are violent. They fight with each other all the time. Men even watch violence for fun, right? Boxing, example, that's a sport. We watch boxing for fun, MMA for fun. Violence is part of who we are as people. And so the reason why gender-based violence or violence against women is considered more outrageous, worse than violence against men, is because women are taken to be the weaker sex. And to perpetrate violence against the weak is naturally distasteful for people, okay, when you perpetrate violence against the weak. But there's something else happening here which I want to also dive into a little bit, and that is the fact that there is a propensity towards requiring obedience of women to men in patriarchal societies. And where women fall in line with those cultural strictures within patriarchal societies, they are less likely to experience violence perpetrated against them. But where women are rebellious towards their cultural mores in their patriarchal societies, they are more likely to experience violence against them. So some people have said, okay, therefore the problem is patriarchy. Why should women, at any rate, have to be restricted in any way by men? And this is where we tend to misunderstand the argument, and this is where we tend to be hypocritical about the argument. In patriarchal societies, men don't only represent a gender, they represent a law. Okay? So men are the legal authorities in the society. They maintain social order. So in the same way that a central government in a modern democracy could call out the police force to perpetrate violence against unruly people in the street, okay, be they men or women, so too in patriarchal societies, men have that job. Okay, they in the past there wasn't a police force. Okay, the men were the police of the society, and because they fulfilled that role, it was the expectation in patriarchal societies that the men of a particular family would keep their woman in that family under control, and in keeping those women under control, any woman from that family who was unruly to the extent that it undermined the social order could actually be disciplined physically through violence. In the same way that people are today disciplined physically through violence by the police. Because what is the police? The police is the arm of the state that has the right to perpetrate violence. That's who they are. Okay? They can physically apprehend people who are misbehaving, and that physical apprehension often includes violent behavior, especially if the perpetrator is resisting. Okay, so a certain amount of reasonable violence can be carried out against such a perpetrator. And so the question really is, the resistance to this movement, this sort of focus on gender-based violence is not just an innocent focus on how distasteful it is for women to be at the receiving end of violence perpetrated by men. It's not only that. It's not just innocent like that, because that's fine. We all agree with that. Okay? From every society, nobody likes to see violence against women. Nobody. Okay? In any society. But the point is, the not so innocent thing is that it comes with a discourse alien to many patriarchal societies. And that discourse is that the men who are the head of a tribe or the head of a household or the head of an organization or the head of a state do not need to be obeyed. And if they are disobeyed, there should be no consequences on those who disobey, including women. And that is where we part ways, I think, in the world today with many of these so-called humanitarian organizations. It is not innocent and honest humanitarianism. It really is not. Okay? It is driving an agenda, and that agenda is to break patriarchal societies. Now, is patriarchy sometimes abused? Sure, right? Is there exploitation? Yes. Do women suffer, especially in times of war and instability and etc., from greater violence against them? Yes, they do. Is there sexual abuse? Yes, there is. Are these things bad? Yes, they are. Should we fight them? Yes, we should. But that should not result in undermining people's traditional, governmental, and societal structures that have existed for thousands of years. Thank you very much. Where's it now? How do I stop this?